thank you guys all so much for coming on today. Just to set the table a little bit, it seems to me, Inslee and the regulations are coming out now, vaccines, weddings, events, other things like that. And I have noticed a shift in the last week or two since Inslee kind of rolled out this first two-step, with vaccinations and everything, that honestly, there's probably not going to be large group dancing at weddings, at least in Washington this year. I know that we've been doing some things with, first dances and everyone's seated, or, the mother, son, whatever, people are seated. But this idea of the dance floor wedding thing that I think a lot of people, I know my weddings that postponed from last year to now, this year, and now we're sitting in January, are already kind of coming to that realization. But also, Alan and I were talking last night, I am still getting inquiries very much so that are not phased at all for things to the summer, which is also interesting, right? And that's also part of the conversation. So I just kind of wanted to get you guys on. We have three, really good, professional, smart, handsome, in some cases more than others, DJs today.
Shawn's here.
Yeah, but just I want to talk about this. I want to know what you guys think about this. Am I on the right track? What should couples be thinking about, and what are some realistic things, right? Like, what are we realistically? All last summer it was, okay, well, maybe by this point, nothing ever changed, nothing ever, right? We're still kind of at the same point. So that's kind of where I'm at. I want to see where the conversation goes to Jay. I'm genuinely excited about that. So why don't we just introduce ourselves? And then I know Greg wants to start, but we'll introduce Shawn and we'll go around and then we'll see where we're at. So Shawn, who are you?
Shawn Whittemore here. I am a DJ and master of ceremonies in Portland, Oregon area. And been at it for nearly 25 years and excited to join the conversation today.
Thank you. And Greg, none of these guys are any strangers to the podcast, but just for new listeners, Greg.
I'm Greg Lowder with Affairs to Remember Entertainment in Seattle, and I'm a DJ, MC, and do lighting.
And Alan Chitlik.
Hello, I'm Alan Chitlik. Puget Sound DJ is my company name, and I'm excited to be here.
Thank you very much. So Greg, first off, just thoughts about this. I really just want to have a conversation today and wherever that goes. So when you hear all this, where are we at? Am I off base in what I'm thinking?
No, I'll be honest, my crystal ball has been very foggy for about a year now, but I think the writing is on the wall is that we don't see open dancing in the majority of Washington, what do they call them now? Hospital districts, until 2022. And I, there might be some of the outskirting ones, or outlying ones that are come around and get some of the things up there. As far as the numbers that are hit, there's the 4 benchmarks that everybody has to hit. But now I will be honest, the definitions of phase 1 and 2 will probably be out later this week, early next week. Here we are, the middle of January. But the phase 3 and phase 4, from what I understand, rules have not been written yet. So whether that means phase 3 gets a little bit open dancing or phase 4 does, I don't know. But there's I believe, some fear of a sweaty dance floor, and understandably so. It's probably, not the safest place to be and not get breathed on.
Alan, you participate a lot in the Facebook groups and a lot of, moderating and seeing with a lot of couples and everything. What have you noticed and seen recently since kind of this new, two-step thing came out?
I think there has been constant apprehension on the case of most couples about what's going to happen. Because the wedding season is so compressed here, basically June-ish through September, you had 2020 couples move to 2021, but that all took a lot of hemming and hawing, and I don't know what we're going to do and what it's going to be like and that kind of thing. For a while, we all thought 2021, we're in the clear, no problem. This is all going to be eradicated by then. But if you look at the graphs, things are really, really bad right now. And people are seeing that. And the government is responding to that. So I do think there's a lot of questions from a lot of couples. There are people who are newly engaged who are seem to be skipping 2021 altogether in favor of 2022. And then couples who perhaps had postponed already, thinking that 2021 would be safe. And what are we going to do now? Like, are we going to try and stay within the guidelines? Are we going to wait another year? People have to decide. There's a lot of challenges.
Shawn, where do you fall on this, and what have been your thoughts, kind of seeing everything? Obviously, you're in Portland. I would say similar mindset, to Seattle, and then also you do a lot of work talking with all the officials and stuff as well, kind of in that role. So where do you come down on all this?
Well, I don't like Alan or Greg at all, and I don't like what they're saying at all. No. I it's just the reality of what we're dealing with. This uncertainty is certainly real, and real for a reason with the case rise. I do some work with LEO, which is the Live Events Industry of Oregon, and we're becoming LEC, the Live Events Coalition, a chapter of, and Oregon will have a chapter. What we've heard federally is that we're expected to do mitigation through September. And the hope is that when we get to October, that the social distancing, the masking, and a lot of those elements will start to be able to go away. I think mainly on that vaccination, projections, which right now we just know are simply projections, and we're falling really far short right now of sort of the modest goals that were set. And I think there's a bit of optimism and hope that with this new administration, setting aside all politics, that maybe we can go ahead and get vaccines on track. If we can hit Biden's, kind of high-end goals of 100 million vaccinated, maybe that October date is realistic. But if we're being truthful with ourselves, it's a projection, and we don't know if we can get the production and distribution and the shots in the arm in the manner in which our federal government is saying we can. And so with that leaves couples with not knowing. And if they don't know, they're not going to move forward, or they're going to postpone, or they're going to cancel. So it puts us with our backs once again against the wall with clients. The normal interactions that you and I have with our clients, that all of us have been greatly altered by this pandemic. And I, for one, want to return to the person I was with my clients, and not the person I am currently with my clients with regards to contracted language, postponements, cancellations, refunds, money forward, and all those things. So I have high hope. I remain an optimist and think that we can get through this. We are Americans, and I think we have the strength and numbers to be able to get it done if we can just align and set aside everything else and focus on this one task: getting people back to work, getting 10 million live events people back to doing events.
Yeah, and it's the timeline that you set is, I think, so important, especially for the Pacific Northwest weddings here, where you say, by October, right? Well, I don't speak for you guys, but I know that, my event calendar, is May really till November 1st. I mean, except for, the scattered weddings or whatever in, December, January. So, brides and grooms out there that are, listening, this is my hope today, is to have this conversation and to just, what I've tried to do, week by week, is, adjust these expectations, to what is going on and what is it going to look like. Because yeah, if the projection is we're going to be set by the end of October, well, if you have a wedding in August and it's not, and that's, that's even the best case scenario, right? I mean, if you're looking for an October wedding and maybe it's a mess still through January, I mean, I don't think anybody thought that we would be here, literally a year. Como News just did the story on Sunday, and it's a year to the date from like the first, contracted, the case that we had in Kirkland out at like the nursing home. So I don't think anybody realized that. So that all being said, Alan, what we've talked about this a lot, not to beat the horse, but what am I thinking now if I'm a couple and I have a date, and then I want to get into the new inquiries too. But if I'm a couple and I have a date, July 17th this year, what am I thinking?
Well, I think you start by what is your history. If you have gone through a postponement already and you're in July, you are probably a little bit shell shocked still from all of that entailed. And you have probably been engaged for a more significant amount of time. And therefore, you may feel more pressure to get on with it, to get married, regardless of what you get to do. And the if you have to limit your activities at your wedding or limit the guests at your wedding, if you have been engaged for 2 years, you probably may just feel some more pressure to do that. If you are newly engaged, you possibly feel a little bit more like, I can wait this out. I can see what's going to happen, and I can probably adjust in terms of guest count. People who are getting married in July still have plenty of time to make adjustments. If they're going to keep on with their date, they could still shrink their guest list if they need to by then. So I don't think there's too many action items right now for a couple, other than to kind of examine their own mindset and their own values and what's important to them. Is a big celebration important to them? What's their risk tolerance? What are the policies of their venue, of their vendors? Like, what are the implications for them of moving out again? I know for people who were supposed to get married in 2020 and their vendors, we're all sick of it. I mean, every couple who's gone through it and has to write these notes, are you available on any of these 3 dates, and find out what is your cancellation policy, what's your postponement policy. It's a drag, and weddings shouldn't be a drag. They should be fun. I mean, unless Shawn is your DJ, but in general, you really want, you want to be able to anticipate that your wedding is going to be fun, and planning it should be fun.
Yeah, I just had an email over the weekend. Was our Memorial Day weekend couple last year, and I remember, in April, Carly messaged me and said, "What are we doing?" And I think I've talked, part of this around this on the podcast before. I said, "Oh, you're fine. It's not even a concern, right?" And then we postponed from, May of last year to May of this year. And just over the weekend, she said, "Hey, because they're like at Access Pioneer Square, so it's like a good, real venue." And they said, "Hey, they're giving us a backup date in case we need it in like October, November, right? Just to be able to shift it." But now, like we said, even talking with Shawn, that still might not be good enough, you know what I mean, to go. And now here you postponed. So, Greg, what are your thoughts on all this?
So 2 things. One, interesting, you picked July 17th as your example date, because that was the first 21 couple I had that pushed to 22.
Already pushed.
Yeah, and they had not changed it. They were one that booked late last year. They pushed to next year. And then today, new inquiry for July 17th this year. So, I mean, on one hand, I'm going, sweet. On the other hand, I'm going, maybe. But here's something interesting. The Washington State Legislature yesterday and today had a bill that they were discussing, and the proposal was to put all the hospital districts in the state of Washington automatically to phase 2, and it had 1,600 people signed up to testify for it, which is the most they've ever had for any bill ever. And so the thought being, because if you look at the rules with the going from the different phases, now they readjusted everything, like we talked about for Inslee a couple weeks ago, But basically, there were the four characteristics everybody had to hit to go up a phase. But there's only two that you have to go negative on to go down. So what this gives people the opportunity is to maintain, a level two, or if they really have a bad time, where there's so many ICU cases, there's so many testing, all that stuff, they'll drop back down to phase one. So if that actually passes and gets the bipartisan support and really just kind of, because Inslee will probably veto it is the call, and then they got to override him. But if they can do that, the main thing it does, and this is what will come out later this week or next week, is weddings have been like, I'm trying to think of the word, like picked on. It sounds like I'm in third grade, but basically uh, said, hey, everything you can do all the events this way unless you're a wedding or a funeral. And if you're that, then you can only do this. And so the main thing that this will do is align the amount of people you can have to restaurants and other events. Because in my opinion, and that's going to start at 25%. And so in my opinion, though, people at a restaurant or people at a wedding reception are much safer off than people at a restaurant, because at a wedding reception, every single person there. They're on a list. You can spread out and set up anything you want instead of just having random people show up at a restaurant at different times, walking by you. At a wedding reception, we can plan everything as we all do to the minute and keep everybody away from each other. So it's a much more safer thing. So by picking on us and saying, oh, weddings are the bad for whatever reason, which the data does not support as far as case numbers go, so if they align what we're doing with everything else, it'll make everything easier. And then as you go to the different phases, they'll just have to adjust the percentages and not like the number of people and all that stuff.
It's so interesting, like you said, with the restaurants. I mean, back months ago when they were open, at the capacity, yeah, Dorothy and I would go, and we'd be sitting there, and someone would walk by and not have their mask on, and like you're sitting but walking in the bathroom, like walkway, and you're like, come on, like what's going on? Well,
Right.
like you said, uh, is that also, and I'm asking this for my own, is the idea behind that also just setting like a baseline that we know is going to be okay? Because I think the problem with the weddings is people, okay, we can do 50 people or 30 people and we can do all this, but what if that drops down, right? Like, I think people are always worried about that. Am I wrong in thinking that people are like,
No,
I want to know the minimum that we can have and we'll just stay there? Is that kind of the thought behind it?
it's a fear because right now with us not being aligned, and they might adjust those numbers on phase one, but if you right now you can't have anything indoors, right? And so if you are if we're all at phase one, we're going to sit there. But if they bump us to phase two, in theory, 2 weeks before your wedding, they could tell you now you're back down to 30 people. And what if you were in a venue that your 25% is 100 people? We've got some big ballrooms in town that would work great for having a large amount of people. And my thing is you could go put they were only allowed to have 25 people at the Tacoma Dome for a wedding. I mean, come on, that doesn't make sense. I mean, and so percentages really make sense. I mean, you have them there. It's a legal thing with the fire code. What a great thing to be able to manage and to keep safe. So, but you're right. The fear of going up, or the enjoying going up is great, but the fear of coming down is going to be, we're going to be crossing our fingers there, and that's a great thing for us. Or a challenge is what happens if it's 2 weeks out and now it's illegal to have that wedding that we were supposed to do.
Yeah, because I mean, and Sean, I want to get your thoughts on this because I mean, we all lived through that here in Washington, and I don't know quite what the timeline was like in where you're at, but I mean, we had weddings where it was like that last week of July, right? And they said everything, August 6th or whatever on, and everyone had weddings the 8th, 9th. And then, of course, like the next day they postponed. They said, okay, well, it'll be after that weekend, which made no sense, But like, it is a very real thing where couples are sitting right now and they're planning. I mean, it was 3 days before, right? Wasn't it like the Thursday for the Saturday, and they made that call? So thoughts on all this and just kind of the uncertainty and
Yeah, we've been a singled out, I think was where Greg was trying to get. We've been a singled out industry for much of this. And what we're seeing in Oregon and kind of what we're saying as our lobby body there for live events is we do need to align, like Greg said, with the restaurant model. I think the fear is that you spend an hour at a restaurant and you spend 4 to 6 hours at a wedding. So your gathering time goes up substantially at a wedding or a corporate event. And so that's where they let the fear overcome. But who better in this world, honestly, than event planners, event coordinators, people like us to do this in a manner which it can be safely done? I mean, had they contracted the 10 million out of work event workers to distribute the vaccine, I know for a fact we have enough smart people. We could have figured out a solution to help with that process for sure, because there are so many organized and creative people. And that's what we do. We're all creatives. We all think out of the box. We all are solutionists. We all come up with ways to overcome the obstacles that face us and then to deliver this experience like no other for our clients, whether that's a small intimate wedding, a big wedding, a small corporate, huge corporate, whatever it is in whatever space, we adapt and overcome. And so we needed our federal government to do more of that with this vaccine distribution. And so I think we're definitely headed in the direction. Oregon has been just a tick less lockdown than Washington, but basically, California, Oregon, Washington are fairly aligned with restrictions. I think it's 50 people you can do an event for right now in Oregon. You guys, it's just a ceremony, only no reception, right? For Washington.
No, you can do a reception, just 30 people.
Oh, 30 people. Okay.
It used to be that way.
Okay. So, we're fairly aligned there. I think where we're headed is as the vaccine gets out, I think we're going to see our numbers go like 50, 100, 150 as far as what's allowed. Now, what that looks like when you're at a wedding and reception with regards to masks and social distancing, those are the pieces that I think what I'm looking for from my couples, especially previously impacted couples, is can we take this journey? Can we do it together? Can we find a way to still let you celebrate and work within the allowable parameters? As difficult as that might be, you're either delaying again, or you're asking the most impacted industry to reach back into their pocket, to reach back into a fund that they're feeding their families. They're paying themselves a modest amount of money to keep paying their mortgage. You're asking us to literally take money we don't have out of our back pocket and give it back to people. And it's just a lot to ask of an industry that's going to be impacted when this all is all said and done to close to 2 years. And so I'm just trying to see if there's any way we can work together to try to have a modified celebration that is still fun, engaging, and delivers the two of them married.
Yeah, I mean, and thank goodness for re-upping some of the PPP and some of these things now. And I know that I'm someone that partook in that because it was March, and then now finally we got, but it's for all small businesses, but especially the events where it's not like we're living like this big margin business, right? It's a ton of time and money. And like you said, trying to do those refunds. Alan, you had a comment. I was going to come to you anyway. Don't worry.
I just want to say one piece of optimism that I want to offer in this is that I feel like the Washington governor's office, at least, has learned from what has happened in the past. As they began creating these standards, I'm not sure they even cared about the wedding industry or had any discussions with anybody who was in the wedding industry. And probably the example that you mentioned, in late July, you are going to end weddings in, what was it, 8 days, and snip off August 8th and 9th. The biggest, probably the biggest weekend of the year. Like, that just tells me that they really didn't have anyone giving them information about what's realistic in the wedding industry. But now they've got Greg and a group of other people who they are listening to. And so I feel like the example that you gave before about maybe we slip back, I think they understand how devastating that would be for some people if they had to just adjust so negatively. So I feel like we're at least not top of mind, but in the discussion now.
Yeah, I mean, and I know the same went for like the restaurants where I would see a lot where, it was supposed to go back up on like Sunday. A bunch of people would get food and stuff ready. They go, oh, okay, well, actually, it's going to be next week or something. Like, well, I can't just open the restaurant, overnight and just have everything ready to go. Um, Greg, I want to talk about, the people that are still going to be getting married now. This is not an unknown now. What does a wedding look like in 2020, 2021? We know what they look like. Um, we have still captured, I don't know, 35, 40 wonderful wedding celebrations this last year, safely and everything else. I mean, what, in your opinion, what do those weddings look like? And I mean, obviously they're still, worthwhile and wonderful to have. Cause I think I want, people shouldn't be like a fear of an unknown, but there also needs to be like a acknowledgement of like what is actually happening right now at these weddings.
Let me answer that and just say I want to clarify something Alan said. Just let you know, Alan, the group had actually been working with the governor's office since April, and so I didn't become a part of it until July or August, and so.
Well, that's when it got good. Is when you joined.
I just listen. That's all. I listen, and I get to put on DJ stuff, and that's kind of fun. But no, the problem with it is they've been talking to them and working with them, and then they basically had a kind of a knee-jerk reaction to some of the numbers, and so they don't ask our opinion or whatever. Then they do now, and we got to write the new wedding proposal, rules and stuff, but then they get to edit them however they want. So they don't send them back to us or anything like that. It's just like, well, here's our thoughts, and so we'll see what happens. We don't know. But you also have, as you mentioned, a lot of people who aren't necessarily in this business trying to do it, and I always use the example is one of the first things they let happen again was car sales in like June or something like that, after we had the shutdown and everything, and they put back and go, hey, you can go buy a car. Well, there was nothing in the rules about being able to do a test drive. So then all of a sudden they're, well, you can do test drives. Well, that's fine, but you'd think that seems obvious, but it wasn't. And so going forward, Reed, to answer your question and stuff, I do think that there's a lot of stuff we can do. And the one thing, and I know having known and talked with Alan and Shawn for a number of years, the thing that's important to a lot of us is really making that day personal for our couples. And so in the past, maybe we, a third of the night or half the night was kind of working on that dance playlist or kind of going through all that sort of stuff. And that's a personal aspect of them, but it can be everything else too. And so I think it gives us this great opportunity to just be open and honest. Okay, here's what it is. And the other thing I've always tried to do is you have a plan and you have a schedule, but you also have those kind of if-thens. And so we might come up with 4 or 5, 6 things that they're okay with, and that we break out if we need to under certain circumstances. Well, we might have to come up with 10 of those things. And for every couple, it's different. And I guarantee you one will pick some. It's just like music. Whatever the favorite song is of one couple will be on the do not playlist of another couple. And that's cool. So it's just, this might be it might add a full additional planning meeting. I mean, that's cool. We sit down, we talk, we come up with what it is that they want to do that's different and unique and interpretation. I don't know about you guys, but it seemed to me that the cake cutting had been kind of not as popular over the last 4 or 5, 6 years. Well, now it's allowed. It's literally in the rules that we're allowed to do it. Even when they had the ceremony, you could do the cake cutting, right? Or ceremony only. So maybe we need to come up with like a super elaborate Mark Farrell-esque sort of cake cutting ceremony, as Mark would say. This is a DJ guru, a friend of ours. And come up with something super elaborate. I don't know. I mean, if it's allowed, why not?
Yeah, I think it's tricky because it's still couples that want to do things the way it was before, right?
Mhm.
And I had a similar conversation last year, with a lot of like self-employed people and getting unemployment and all these other things. But I said, being self-employed, I view as a privilege, right? Like I view that as being, not having to, and it's fine to go into the office and all that, but being able to work from home is a privilege for me, right? And being able to have a large wedding with a big dance party, or whatever, I mean, that's a privilege, right? I mean, that's not an expectation, right? I have my football podcast that I do, and we early on we were really into the COVID stuff and everything. Sports is like the benefit of like a functioning society, right? Because everyone's safe and we're all doing everything. We're able to like go watch like NFL games or whatever, right? And it's the same thing with dancing, right? It's not just a given that, well, just because I want to get married, I'm going to have 300 people and all this stuff. And, I mean, we can certainly get back to that, but it's not like that's not an expectation, right? But it does seem like that's like a right, right? Am I saying that right? Do you guys feel? I mean, Shawn, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think we're in a spot where we're doing a bit of sort of education or re-education people and getting them to understand that yes, dancing is a piece of your wedding, but there's still other elements that you can highlight, that you can incorporate, that are part of the day, that can be part of it. And maybe I've seen some of your DJs up there doing those socially distant pod dances. I don't know how that's going, but is that a solution for a place that has an outdoor venue to create pods? We've seen these concert setups where they have these containment zones where a group that it has agreed to be together, can stay in their pod. So can we be solution finders? Can we get creative? Can we adjust what were our norms and create some new norms for people, and just figure out a way to adapt and overcome to the circumstances that we all know are here, right? They're here. We have to live with them, with however long this goes on. And who's to say, that 2022 doesn't bring something different or new that's going to cause another pivot, adjustment, rethinking. I think the one thing that I learned early on at 21 was listening to a professor literally say to me, and I struggle with this and I still struggle, but he said that the only constant in life is change. And I think we're at a spot right now where people are very inflexible politically, personally, professionally, and they're just not willing to adapt and change. I think as a society as a whole, as Americans, we need to change. We need to change our perspectives. We need to change our thoughts. We need to change our attitudes about our friends that have different political views, about our family members that have different political views, and in general about what we're talking about weddings. We need to change what was to something new. And it doesn't have to mean it's not great. It's just different.
Yes, talking about the creative pivots, I really like that. I mean, I know Alan, they call you Creative Chitlik on the side, just because you're so good at um, trying to even like I'm making a joke, but I'm actually getting into it. Like for example, the anniversary dance, right? You are someone that has thoughts about that, and you go out of your way to make anniversary dance, right? That's you're not kicking a couple off to the side, right? I'm saying this right. I'm speaking truth. When it comes to creativity for these weddings and things, and like Shawn's talking about these pivots, what are your thoughts on that? And I know that you have conversations with your couples about like how to still get the best they can out of things.
Sure. Well, I think part of the way that if you're a couple, can start to think of this is if somebody came to my wedding and there was no dancing, could they still have fun? Could they still feel like it was our wedding? And if the answer is, if you're really on the fence about whether that the answer is yes, if you kind of go, I don't know, every wedding that we've enjoyed has been a rockin' 2.5 hour dance party, then 2021 is not your answer, right?
They must not have hired Alan for that one.
Yes. But if you say, sure, our wedding can be fun, it can be a great time for us to get the people who are close to us together and get them all under the same roof, then start from that. Start from that idea of we're going to make it personal to us. We're going to share the fact that we're in love and we're committing ourselves to each other. We're going to share that with the people that we really care about. And we're going to take steps to make it personal, even if the end of the night doesn't involve dancing. So there are many activities that the good DJs can help suggest that will bring out the personalities of the couple and just keep the entertainment factor at a fairly high level, even if there isn't dancing. So I think couples have to just think about that mindset. Can they adjust? Are they able to be happy with the kind of wedding that 2021 is probably going to present? If they can be satisfied with that, then go for it. Make sure you are working with somebody that you trust to pull this off for you. If not, if you really are focused on that dance party, then don't look back. Get to 2022 and call it good.
Yeah, and they even and I know, and Greg, correct me if I'm wrong. I think in the regulations now, right, you can still do like the first dance, people seated, right, mass, like a father daughter and all that. And I've even seen some comments about that, like, well, that's got to be weird or that's got to be awkward. And like, it's really not. I mean, at all. Like, we filmed them, the same way you would do like a grand entrance and people would be seated. It's really not awkward at all, right? And something that struck me too, and this is obviously with DJs here, it's weird, right? Because I think people look at DJs and they think of, dance party, whatever. There's so many other things that are facilitated and part of the reception, toast, grand entrance, I know like Alan and the shoe games and things, the cake cutting, all these other things that are facilitated, right? And I just edited last week a wedding that Alan and I had done from like 2 years ago. Long story short, but the bride had never, whatever. And I edited this wedding from like a different world, right? That like doesn't even exist anymore. And what struck me about it is how little of the actual dance party, really, I mean, it's obviously it's a huge part of the day, but like I think people envision it as like, well, that was 80% of the wedding, right? And it's not. There's so many other things, from the ceremony and the toast and the cake cutting and the getting ready and the family photos and all these other things that, like, it's not the be all end all that you can't have 45 minutes of open dancing at the end of your wedding, right? I mean, are you guys feeling, Greg, do you feel what I'm saying here?
I have. It's funny, as I've gone through all this, I'm thinking back to the weddings I've done in the past before 2020 that didn't have dancing, and I figured I averaged about 2 a year of those for the last at least 10 years, and honestly, they were the most, in hindsight, challenging and time-consuming weddings of the year. Instead of me having, because the music just kind of fills 2 hours at the end of the night, and there's not a lot. You work on the playlist and you do all that, but we're professionals. We kind of know if you play song A, that song B is probably going to work, and where people are at. And in these ones, we went from doing the regular 9 to 12 kind of events throughout the reception. We were doing 15 to 20 and going through and just getting really creative. I had a fifth grade teacher, so we played a big long game of Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader? The funny part of that one was, as we were going through the questions, I realized how difficult they were, so we actually used second grade questions. I didn't make that decision in the moment. I made that decision because I looked at the questions and was like, nah, these aren't going to work. But we had a good time, and if it's this summer, think about, so this particular wedding, and we had planned out a bunch of stuff, but again, this becomes the stuff, kind of the if then, where I'm keeping stuff in my pocket and kind of breaking it out as we need to. We were at Newcastle in the tent, and it was one of those nights where the sunset was like a 2 hour long sunset. And so people would go out and watch the sunset, and Neil Hubbard was out playing his bagpipes, and it was just gorgeous. But there was clouds, and so as the sun was going down, the clouds kind of dissipating a little bit. And it was one of those nights where it started early, it ended late, and people just kind of came in and out, and we were just doing stuff. So it was lucky for me, but it was one of those kind of epic nights that you look back on. And I bet you only 2 or 3 people that were, I think they were teenagers, were like, are we going to do dancing? Everybody else was just thoroughly entertained and had a good time. And that brings up an interesting point. Do you talk about the elephant in the room or not? Because I don't want people to feel like they're disappointed. Or do you just keep them so entertained that they don't even think about it? I don't know. Depends on the couple, I guess.
Yeah, Shawn, where do you land on that?
Yeah, I mean, all good points. And the reality is, like Greg said, we each have a couple every year that, for whatever reasons, maybe choose not to have dancing as part of their evening. And I think most people, can have fun, I think, if the opportunity presents and it's guided in a way that they feel like they can access the activity or observe the activity. And a guy like Alan, a guy like Greg can make these moments come to life the way that they're presented by having an understanding of what our couples are looking for, who they are, and what can help highlight why we're all there. Let's remember, we've gathered to see these two people get married, kick their lives off together with a party. Now, what that party looks like is different for every single couple, but typically we end the celebration with some kind of dancing, anywhere from 1 hour to 3 or 4 hours, depending on who you are. I had 5.5 hours the other night for 20 people, but I mean, that's the only one I've ever had that was 5.5 hours. They're normally like 2 hours. And as a DJ, honestly, like 5.5 hours is far too much. Like, I'm spent and exhausted. So, those 2.5 hour dance sets are fantastic. But I think there are a number of things we can do and present to our couples that will highlight them, that will, fill the time with meaningful activity, that will leave people saying, wow, that was different. And then, kind of almost like Greg alluded to, they're sort of like trying to figure out, why was it different? And then they look back and go, it was so good, they don't even remember. We didn't dance. That's what was different. Like, but it's only in reflection, because you still engage them in a way that brought everybody together, let them have a good time, and almost just forget that dancing wasn't part of it. I don't think they're going to recognize it in the moment. I think they're going to recognize it in reflection when we meet new couples that go, I'm hiring Greg. Greg killed this party and nobody danced. That's how great a DJ he was. Like, he killed it and nobody danced. So I think you're going to see it in 2022 and later, when couples come to you to book you and say, man, that was so epic. You did that with no dancing. I can't imagine if we could actually have that piece be in there as well.
Before we go, I want to, and Alan and I think we were talking about this last night, the new inquiries now, right? So, I mean, obviously we have the couples that are getting, that are already engaged, that have either postponed, or like Greg had one that, picked this year and now, is postponing. But I still, I had 2 consults yesterday. One was a live stream for a wedding, but then the other was like a normal wedding in July. I had a call the other day, and I said, he would just, I hate these like cold calls, like, hey, tell me about your wedding, whatever. You're like, but I said, generally we try to, we're there 8 to 10 hours. Obviously it's different right now, because everything's kind of shifting. He goes, oh, well, our venue's not going to care. We're going to do like, we're going to be down in Chehalis. Like, it doesn't matter. And I was like, oh, okay. So point being, 3 or 4 of the like last 4 or 5 I've had still are very much like, we're just planning the wedding this year. Right. And so I guess, where is that divide coming? I'm very confused by that, because I really did. I think Alan and I was trying to remember which podcast it was. If it was the like, preparing for 20, I don't know, one of the ones that we did, we talked about this and we said, well, surely everybody is on the same page now that we know that this is like a thing, and we're not, but it's really not. And I'm still really getting a lot of calls. So who wants to start? Where is that divide coming from? Greg?
Yeah, I had one the other day and talked to her pretty extensively, and you know, brought it up, and as we kind of went through different things, and her, quote was, no one's wearing any masks at my wedding. And I can understand if she said she wasn't, or he wasn't, or something like that. I mean, I did my, I don't know, whenever they were legal again, one of mine, the bride had a very lacy mask that matched her dress. I thought that was kind of cool. But she said, I don't care if my vendors do. And so I just had a frank conversation with her about it and stuff. And I know some people would have been, okay, no problem. And other people would have been, oh, well, you're not my kind of client, or whatever, would have just kind of gotten off the phone. But I decided I would just have a big, long conversation with her about it. And it was interesting to see her motivation. It was not everybody was from the same area. This was a private property place. And it just was, what she wanted to do. And in the end, I'll be honest, I quoted her such a high price that there's no way she'll book me, but I didn't want to, I just kind of gave her threw a number out there with her, and we'll see. But it's just such a tough thing. I mean, would I show up if I knew everybody wasn't wearing a mask? Or would I book it? I'd be wearing one. I'd make sure it's outside in the field and I'm really far away from everybody. But then that leads to the open dancing. If they're going to break the mask rule, are they going to do open dancing? I wouldn't be able to go straight against that. If it's outright banned. So I guess it's everybody's personal prerogative or something.
Alan, I saw you pull out some notes. I think you have a good follow-up here. I saw you shuffling papers.
I was shuffling some notes from the last 5 couples I chatted with, and their dates are June 26th, July 3rd, July 25th, August 13th, and I talked to a couple yesterday about October 9th. And you are right, in my opinion. Most of these people are presuming that we're going to be fine. And I think part of that is just this whole idea of how long can this freaking virus go on?
Long time.
Yeah, I don't think any of us could have even believed we would have this wave this bad in year 2 where we are. So I think there's an element to which, and it still feels a long way off for some of these people. July and August feel like months away, and they feel like, okay, well, we've got the vaccine, we've got some good news coming. And I don't necessarily feel like that the restrictions that the governor's office is putting out are particularly well communicated. You have to kind of dig or know somebody or be on some groups that are full of informed people. So I think that's where the disconnect comes from, is that people want to have that Puget Sound sunny July, August wedding. They crave it. It's because it's so great.
And rare.
So I don't know. I think, this podcast hopefully will educate some people to open up their eyes and look at some of the restrictions and make decisions about how that could impact them and what they want to do about that.
One quick note before we go to Shawn. I just remember this because Alan, we were on one of the last podcasts we did in 2020 was, the 2021 wedding, right, and the vaccine or whatever. And then we did the vendors, and we had, all these vendors come on and talk about, how are we feeling about, 2021 wedding season with the vaccine. And then the next week I did a follow-up with all couples. And I said, hey, because there was a lot of reaction, some people postponed, some people didn't, whatever. And I had a bride on, and she came on and she goes, absolutely not. We're not postponing. This is what we're doing. Like we are set in stone. Last week, I see her post online in the same group, like, hey, so we're rescheduling, looking for a wedding planner for next year. Right. And not to shame or make fun or whatever, but right. I mean, like Shawn said earlier, change and being flexible on things. But I mean, this was just, end of December, right? I mean, this was probably wasn't even a month ago, right? And this is how things are changing. And so, if you have couples that were that dead set on it a month ago, that she said, I'm going to go on a podcast because I am someone that's advocating for doing it this summer and nothing will change my mind. And then it was like 3.5 weeks later, changing that. I mean, that is how quick, because I know a lot of people that wouldn't be that strong enough to sit down on a podcast to talk about their feelings about it in that strong of a regard. You get what I'm saying? Shawn, what do you think about that?
Yeah, so lately for me, it's been a book one, lose one game, which we all know it's a losing game for our industry. It's not a great model. The events that we did have were postponements, so they're already tying up important dates in 2021. They're now wanting to move. The new ones that booked in late during the pandemic for 2021 and haven't been impacted yet are now starting to be impacted and make decisions about dates in May, June, July, August to shift to 2022. And then you have the people that you're all discussing that are the eternal optimists, the glass is always full, that are booking now for dates near, right? In the next 6 months, 8 months. And I think if you have those frank conversations, that there's a pandemic afloat, if everybody's looking around, right? It's here. It's not going anywhere. So just with that reality in mind, you're booking this date with the understanding that you're going to scale and do what's allowed within the parameters of that date. Because none of us are in the game of book now, hold the date, clear a date, push to new date, cancel then. Like, that's not the game that we're in. The dates are the inventory. The dates are the critical element here. And I think there's a big disconnect with clients understanding how valuable our inventory is. Alan alluded it. Yeah, and limited. Alan alluded to it earlier. I always tell people we have 18 to 20 prime weekends in the Pacific Northwest. 18 to 20 prime dates that everybody's after, because they want to know, why are you so expensive? Like, well, I've got limited date availability. Everybody wants these 18 to 20 Saturdays. And so they have a premium price, to have them. So I like the optimism. I'm scared, if I'm being honest, about the clients that are not giving any opportunity to scale to what's allowed for July and August and September. It's concerning. PP2 will be helpful, but it'll be gone quickly like PP1 was, and so, like you guys, I'm living on a, government loan, the EIDL, the economic injury disaster loan. So, savings gone, the money's gone, and I'm living on money that I have to repay. So my hope is that people can understand that the pandemic has had massive impact, and, either scale to what's allowed or understand, refunds are difficult, cancellations are impossible, and, let's try to work together and make it happen.
Yeah, I mean, the good news is, and then we'll get final thoughts here. There was a lot of conversations, March, April, whatever, about, changing contracts and adding all this stuff and what are we going to do? And I mean, I really didn't, do anything. We kind of handled them case by case. And now I've never had to change the contract because, the policies that are in place now, I mean, what's going on. We are not canceling these dates. We can reschedule and we can go down that route, or we can reduce coverage. But yeah, there is no cancellations of any kind, especially now where everything is known. I mean, we can do a reschedule fee or waive that if it's, you're moving to a Tuesday or whatever. But I mean, that's not existent anymore. And I think that, I don't know if that's the mindset that people have that are booking these and they're like, oh, well, we can just, we'll cancel, or we had one, for a live stream the other day, and they were bounced around a couple dates. And I just had a post, like Greg, I just had a postponement, and so I said, wow, that'd be great to fill that. But I said, please, like, make sure that you know that that's a date that if you need to take a week, because they're just doing it like at an Airbnb, really small, just like it's like an elopement, like 6 people on the live stream. I said, because you know, we can book the date, but then we can't just move it because you guys felt like doing it on the June 1st versus May 22nd or whatever, right? I mean, these are, like you guys said, these are valuable inventory. Final thoughts before we go. Like I said, I know that there wasn't like any checking point of things to get through today. I just kind of wanted to hear where everybody is. And I mean, this has fulfilled my expectations of what I was looking to have. So I appreciate that. I don't know sometimes Alan's a tougher critic on us than I am. But why don't we start with Shawn? Final thoughts, and we'll go around and we'll end it up with Alan. Shawn, thank you so much for coming on today. And it's not, these aren't fun conversations all the time.
No, I was hoping to see Greg braid Alan's back hair. I thought that was what was happening on this podcast. I'm not sure what
he shaved it before the call, so we don't have.
Okay. I misread that. I misread that totally. So
Reed, this is why they invented editing software, Reed.
I need my XFL Markcast soundboard right now. We have one that's like, wow.
I don't mean to throw off his editing.
No,
I think in a recap, my hope is that to the clients that might listen to this and to the couples that are out there in any state really is talk with your vendors. They're good people, honestly. Like most of us are really trying to do right by our clients as best we possibly can. If you can hold on to that date and modify some of what would have happened at that date, I think you can still have a spectacular celebration. So it's really about working with the people that you've secured to make sure that sort of what you're envisioning can be adjusted slightly and then fit this new model. And I think you'll still walk away extremely happy, and you don't have to necessarily postpone. So my hope is clients will take the ride with us and give us a shot to try to make something happen in 2021. So we can sort of inch our way back to some of the normalcy we all crave and desire.
That's good. Greg, what about you? And any buses you want to throw anybody under? Have at it.
No, just in talking to the couples and I want to encourage them not to be discouraged. And I know, on one hand, in Shawn's great words about the glass being half full is in 20 years from now, when people find out you got married in 2020 or 2021, they're going to be like, what? Wow. It's going to be a heck of a story to tell. And it's something that, if you want to do it and have a heck of a 5th-year, 5-year anniversary party or 2 or whatever sort of stuff, and just embrace it and just have it be the new normal, as people are saying, or as Alan said, maybe then you got to wait till next year. But I think that you can do it. And nothing against going to the courthouse, but if you decide to do a small one, don't go to the courthouse. Get your same officiant. Get one of us. Shawn, you're an officiant too, right? Yeah, most DJs are, and go grab your 2 best friends and go to your favorite whatever lake, someplace, and go get married at sunset. And I talked to a couple the other day about doing that. And I don't advertise that I do officiating. The only reason I have it is because I had an officiant not show up years and years ago. And so I do a few a year and everything. But how about go get married on a ferry? Just the 5 of you. Maybe a photographer, maybe Reed comes shoot the video. How cool would that be? And just keep it there. Then you got that. And then you go have a party in 2022.
That's good. Alan?
I think that couples who are listening to this podcast because they're engaged are in a crucible that no other couples have had to face. They've just the decisions and the challenges and the uncertainty are so much harder for people in this time frame. So I feel for all of them. I think though that because of the circumstances, it's an opportunity for a couple to really, really examine what are their priorities, what do they want, Do they want more people? Do they want dancing? Can they live with smaller numbers? Do they have their heart set on a venue? You've got to communicate with your fiance and just really in your heart to figure out what you would be happy with, and then figure out how you might achieve that. For me, and I think a lot of people in the industry and a lot of my couples, the uncertainty is the killer. If you said absolutely, we're not going to have any dancing, or we're not going to have more than 30 people at a wedding until this date, but at this date will be different, then you can move. But nobody thought we'd be in a circumstance this bad right now. It's heartbreaking to think that the summer might continue on with all these restrictions, but it might. And so being realistic about that, keeping up on the latest from the governor's office, and I can give you all Greg's cell phone number and you can check with him. Call me maybe. So I don't know. Good luck. That's what I've got to say.
Yeah.
Is it still 867-5309? Did he change it ever?
425. I would encourage everybody too, if you search on Facebook for WSMEA, that's the Washington State Wedding and Event Association.
Yeah, WSWEA. Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't read. WSWEA. Yeah. And that's going to have the latest information, and we'll be able to help everybody out.
Yeah, I'll link it in the show notes. Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I would say the couples that have done the small ones, book me or someone else, the live streaming. I just, whoever you book, but I tell you, the ones that have done the 15 people and live streamed it to grandma and grandpa, and then can move on with their lives and plan a party in a couple years, I think are the ones that are, because otherwise you're just in this waiting game, and it's tough. And I get it. I mean, everyone wants stuff, and everyone has expectations of everything in this world, and sometimes it is not the way that you wanted it to be, and you just gotta figure it out. So thank you guys all so much, and I'll put everyone's information, and I'll plug the WSWA thing in the show notes too, just to make it easy, because it's so buried in the show here. But yeah, I know a lot of people always post about where can we find the latest information, and they really are doing the Lord's work that way and keeping everything up to date. So thank you guys all so much again, and I hope everyone takes care and stay safe.
You too, Reed. Thanks.